So today I am talking with Allan Sutherland, well-known disability arts writer and historian, I guess.
I've discovered you get old enough, you turn into a historian just because you can remember all the stuff that young people want to know about.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, I feel a bit like that myself. So, as I say, we're talking with Allan Sutherland. You've got a new book coming out.
Yeah, well, the book is this one. It's called Electric Bodies: Travels in Life History. It's from Electric Bodies, which is a project that's been going on as a subsection of D4D, which is a larger academic research project about disability and community. And as part of that, I've been working with Disability Arts Online. I've done a number of cycles of transcription poetry with various leading figures of the disability arts movement, yourself included, and that's produced a set of cycles of doing this process. It has lots of outcomes because it works from oral history interviews. So the first thing is we get a set of interviews with leading disabled artists, which then go on record, and then they're then in a library and available for researchers to look at. And for each person I interview, we get like a cycle of poems in which each poem is like a scene in a play. It's like telling a life story. And from those one can bring out different selections. I've edited them down to do reading versions of different lengths for according to what people want, or I've pulled out sort of thematic selections from across the different sets of poems that we've used for some really good animations that I've done with Colin.
Wow.
Colin Hambrook. And all of that can be found on the D4D website. And I would encourage people, if they like the two poems that I'll read later today, or even if they like what's in the book, to look further and find the larger cycles of poems.
You said you've chosen, you picked some disability artists of note. So who and how did you choose them?
That's Matt Fraser, Catherine Ariella, Julie McNamara, Tony Heaton, Jess Tom, Robin Surgeoner, Vicky Rayford Sinnott, and Colin Hambrook, all of whom were people who I thought were people of importance, whose work needs to be recorded, go down in history. Because this is partly an oral history project.
Yeah.
And also people I thought would be interesting to interview.
Well, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the interview process. Would you just like to tell our viewers kind of what that oral history process entailed?
With each person, I've done a long interview over 2-3 sessions, basically a life history interview in most cases. Then I've transcribed the recordings and edited those into sets of poems, which is something I've been working at for a while now as a process, and turns out to be a really productive one. It's very interesting how the individual person's voice survives that process. That was the first time we did a set of these, which was with Nancy Willis some years ago. That was a thing that Colin Hambrook and I both noticed. Disability Arts Online had been kind of the publisher of this work, and that wasn't something we were necessarily expecting, that the individual voice would come through that strongly, but it really does. Even when I do live readings, still the voice of the person who's been interviewed is really strongly there.
I mean, I'd agree. Having been part of that process and then read the almost like a biography in prose, you know, it was fascinating actually feeling like I was hearing myself. So I think, again, for viewers, if you are interested in how this has worked, and to learn lots more about some of the disability artists that have gone before now, obviously I'm still here. It's a really fascinating read, and one that you can pick up and put down at leisure as well. I think it's very good that you can go in and out of it.
Yeah, things work as individual poems, but also when you read the whole set of them, it's a narrative, it's a story. I mean, my background is primarily in script writing, and that's the skill that I'm bringing to this. It's not the skills of lyric poetry so much.
Oh, I think that comes through, actually. I think that's a really interesting point to make.
Comedy writing in particular is because comedy is it's all about stress and pacing and where you put the pauses and all of that stuff.
So the book is being launched on the 8th of July and it's going to be an online event. The details we will put onto the website. But Allan, I'd really like to finish this interview with a couple of poems from the book. So if I can pass over to you to read those to us, please.
Yeah. I've picked out a couple of poems that aren't so much about people's lives. A lot of the stuff in these sequences is about what people's lives, what their creative journey has been, if you like. But there are a few poems that are a bit angrier, if you like, a bit more in your face, that appeal to my character particularly. So I picked out a couple of those because they work particularly well as poems to be read in isolation. Some of the poems you kind of need to read the one before and the one after to really get the flow of it. These stand on their own, and they're both very much about disability arts and what we're all about. The first one is from the words of Tony Heaton, and it's called Wall of Power. People might say, well, it's not interesting enough. It's not important enough. If it was important, then people would have heard about it. But I don't agree. I think it is important. I think it's really interesting. They just don't get it. I think we've educated the subtle, the white middle classes to not express that prejudice in open court. But I think they probably still think it, a lot of them. They just know they can't say it anymore. So we're still fighting that wall of power and rank that don't want us in there. Because they instinctively know that it means one of their kind has to give up their seat at the table, and they can't hack that at all. And the second one is from the words of Jess Tom, otherwise known as Tourette's hero, and it's called Working Conditions. Why do we go to theatre and expect not to sit next to a learning disabled person? Why are people with conditions like Tourette's having to make shows to occupy space or to have to actively advocate for their inclusion in these spaces? One of the things that frustrates me is that companies say that not all directors are into doing relaxed performance. Well, you get to make the work you do, but you don't get to say who sees it. If you're not prepared to do relaxed performance, then list who you don't want in your audience. Tell me who you don't want. I think that is the difficult thing about the exclusion of disabled people, because there's this perception that for so long the idea was that you gave access as a charitable act, as a gift. It was a nice bonus that you did for people, rather than the right of everybody to be able to access our shared cultural space. We're chipping away at that, but it definitely hasn't been smashed to pieces yet.
Allan, thank you ever so much. And we will get the links onto the website.
Brilliant. Take care, Robin.